You think you know the story of Beauty and the Beast, the gentle maiden, the fearsome creature, the enchanted castle, and the final blossoming of love. For centuries it has been retold as a sweet fable of compassion and romance. Yet what if I told you that this tale, often recited to children before sleep, may conceal something far more ancient, more unsettling, and more profound? Hidden beneath the surface of this familiar legend lies a current of mystery that flows back thousands of years. Archaeologists, historians, and folklorists have traced fragments of the story across continents, finding echoes of it in temples, ruins, and forgotten manuscripts. Its roots may stretch beyond medieval Europe into the dim light of prehistoric myth, where gods and beasts were indistinguishable, and love was a force that bound mortals to the underworld itself. This is not simply a fairy tale of beauty and horror. It is a window into the human soul, a riddle carved into history, waiting to be unlocked. Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there lived a merchant who had fallen into misfortune. He had once been wealthy and respected, but storms ruined his ships, thieves plundered his caravans, and soon he was left with little more than a small cottage where he lived with his children. Among them was his youngest daughter, known not for riches or jewels, but for her kindness and radiant spirit. She was called Beauty. One day the merchant set out to reclaim his fortune. His journey took him through forests and distant cities, yet all ended in disappointment. On his way home, weary and broken, he wandered into a hidden path that led to a grand castle. There, he found a feast prepared as if waiting for him, and gardens filled with roses even in the depth of winter. Famished and desperate, he ate and drank. Before leaving, he plucked a single rose to bring back to Beauty. At that moment, the master of the castle appeared, a monstrous beast whose form was neither man nor animal but a dreadful fusion of both. The beast roared with fury at the theft, demanding the merchant's life as payment. Trembling, the merchant pleaded for mercy. The beast relented on one condition: that one of the merchantess' daughters must come willingly to dwell in the castle in his place. When Beauty learned of this bargain, she chose to sacrifice herself. She entered the beast's lonely halls and discovered not cruelty, but sorrow and mystery. Over time, the terrifying figure revealed a gentleness hidden beneath his outward horror. Beauty grew to love the beast, and her love broke the curse that bound him. He transformed into a prince, freed from enchantment. And so, they lived happily ever after, a tale told for generations as a lesson in compassion, sacrifice, and the power of love. But the tale was not always told in the gentle form we know today. The version of Beauty and the Beast most familiar to modern audiences is often credited to Jeanne-Marie Le Prince de Beaumont, who published her adaptation in 1756. Her text simplified and moralized the story for the instruction of young girls, presenting Beauty as the embodiment of obedience, virtue, and humility, while the Beast was a noble soul tragically imprisoned within a monstrous body. Yet earlier, in 1740, Gabrielle Suzanne Barbette de Villeneuve published a much longer and darker account. In her tale, the Beast's castle was filled with magical illusions, servants transformed into invisible hands, and dreams in which Beauty conversed with a mysterious prince. This version contained elaborate backstories of curses, jealous fairies, and wars between supernatural beings. It was less a simple romance and more a sprawling myth tangled with symbols of fate and punishment. Even before the French writers, however, folklorists note the appearance of similar motifs across Europe. In Italy, during the 16th century, Giovan Francesco Straparola recorded The Pig King, in which a cursed prince was born in the shape of a boar and could only be freed by marriage. In Scandinavia, stories of maidens wed to trolls or bears carried the same essence. Each culture reshaped the tale according to its own fears and desires, turning monstrous grooms into figures that reflected the mysteries of the unknown. The moral lessons shifted with time. In the Enlightenment, the tale taught young women to look beyond appearances and accept arranged marriages. In the Victorian age, it was softened into a children's bedtime story, its darker edges trimmed away. Today, we remember only the most polished surface. Love conquers all, yet hidden beneath, the bones of older myths still pulse, echoing with something stranger than simple romance. When we peel away the polished fairy tale layers, the skeleton of Beauty and the Beast reveals astonishing connections to ancient mythologies. The image of a maiden entering the dwelling of a terrifying creature is far older than France, echoing through the sagas of gods, spirits, and demons. In Greek mythology, Persephone was seized by Hades and taken to the underworld, where she became both prisoner and queen. Her descent mirrors Beauty's entrance into the Beast's castle, a crossing of thresholds from the world of the living into a shadowed realm ruled by a powerful, feared figure. From the Norse traditions comes the figure of the Jotnar giants, who often demanded human brides. These unions symbolized the binding of human and primal forces, a reconciliation between chaos and order. The maiden who embraced the monstrous husband became a mediator between worlds. In Hindu mythology, stories of divine unions between mortals and gods in animal form abound. Vishnu himself once incarnated as a boar Varaha to rescue the earth. Here again we see the merging of human devotion and animal might, a pattern that transcends geography. Even in ancient Mesopotamia, the goddess Inanna descended into the underworld and faced demons who stripped away her garments, her pride, and her life. Only through sacrifice and eventual return did she restore balance. Beauty's willingness to give herself to the beast recalls this archetype of descent, surrender, and transformation. What if beauty is not merely a dutiful daughter but a symbolic figure of the soul itself, journeying into darkness to uncover hidden truth? And what if the beast is more than a cursed prince, but a shadow of the divine masculine, a god in exile awaiting recognition? When seen in this light, the tale is less about romance and more about initiation. It is the story of death and rebirth, of humanity's age-old attempt to reconcile love with fear, spirit with flesh, light with shadow. The beast's castle becomes a temple, and beauty's choice becomes a ritual older than memory. In 2016, a group of folklorists and evolutionary anthropologists conducted a remarkable study, tracing the genealogy of traditional tales using methods similar to those applied in genetics. What they discovered shook the academic world. The structure of Beauty and the Beast, or animal bridegroom tales, could be traced back at least 4,000 years, possibly into the Bronze Age. This suggested that the tale had been carried in oral tradition long before the written word, passed across trade routes, whispered at firesides, and preserved in memory. Across Europe and Asia, archaeologists uncovered artifacts that hint at this universal motif. Carvings on ancient Greek urns depict women offering garlands to half-human figures. In Celtic burial mounds, scholars found amulets shaped like beasts embracing women, their entwined forms hinting at sacred union. In Mesopotamia, cylinder seals showed hybrid creatures, part lion, part man, standing beside priestesses, as if recording a cosmic marriage between beast and maiden. Even in more recent centuries, folk traditions across Eastern Europe carried near-identical narratives. A young woman leaves her family, enters a forbidden house, and encounters a terrifying husband who eventually reveals divine or princely qualities. The persistence of this structure suggests not coincidence, but deep cultural memory. Experts now believe the Beauty and the Beast motif may have originated in Proto-Indo-European societies. More than 6,000 years ago, these communities revered animal spirits, feared the wilderness, and sought harmony between humankind and nature's untamed powers. By encoding these anxieties into story, they transformed fear into a lesson of reconciliation. Thus, the fairy tale we know today stands as an archaeological artifact in itself, not just paper and ink, but the fossilized remnant of an ancient worldview, preserved in the amber of myth. To read Beauty and the Beast is to peer into a cavern where ancestors once painted on stone walls, trying to reconcile the human and the monstrous, the visible and the hidden. What seems to be a charming moral tale may instead conceal a complex web of symbolic meanings. Each element, when examined closely, resonates with archetypes found across myth and ritual. The rose, often portrayed as the object Beauty's father plucks, carries ancient associations with blood, life, and mortality. In medieval Christian symbolism, the red rose was tied to martyrdom and sacrifice. In older pagan contexts, it represented the cycle of death and renewal. By asking for a rose, Beauty unknowingly invokes a symbol of descent into fate. The beast himself is no mere monster. His dual form echoes the archetype of the liminal guardian, found in myths of gatekeepers who stand between realms. In Egyptian religion, Anubis guarded the threshold of death with the head of a jackal. In Greco-Roman myth, Pan bridged man and beast, civilization and wilderness. The beast is such a guardian, testing Beauty's courage and willingness to embrace shadow. Beauty's journey into the castle can be read as a rite of passage. In anthropological studies of initiation, a young initiate often leaves home, confronts a terrifying figure, endures trial, and returns transformed. Beauty's act of choosing to live with the beast mirrors these rituals, suggesting her role as an initiate entering the mysteries of adulthood, sexuality, and spiritual union. Even the transformation of the beast carries hidden meaning. It is not simply a magical curse lifted, but the revelation that what we fear may conceal the sacred. The hideous face of nature, once embraced, becomes divine. This echoes alchemical traditions, where the base and ugly must be accepted and purified before gold can be revealed. Thus, beneath its veneer of romance, Beauty and the Beast may be an encoded map of human experience. Love as sacrifice, union as transcendence, and transformation as the reward for facing fear. Its mystery lingers because it reflects not just the story of two characters, but the journey of every soul that dares to cross the threshold between innocence and knowledge. The story of Beauty and the Beast you thought was merely a charming fable for children turns out to be something far older and far deeper. It is not just the tale of a kind maiden and a cursed prince, but the survival of a myth that has traveled through millennia. Behind the castle walls and the rose gardens lie echoes of Persephone's descent, Inanna's trial, and ancient unions between mortals and gods. It is a story of thresholds between the human and the animal, the living and the dead, the innocent and the initiated. Its rose is a flower plucked from the garden of time, its beast a guardian of mysteries we still cannot fully name. To love the beast is to confront terror and discover divinity hidden within it. When we view this tale not as a children's bedtime story, but as an artifact of humanity's collective memory, it becomes more than entertainment. It becomes a sacred drama, a ritual repeated across ages, guiding us to embrace what frightens us most in order to be transformed. Beauty and the Beast is therefore not a romance alone, but a coded myth of reconciliation between humanity and wilderness, between the feminine soul and the shadowed masculine, between fear and love. Its endurance is proof that we are still grappling with these ancient truths. And if this revelation makes you shiver, remember, the fairy tales we dismiss as harmless often guard the deepest secrets of our past, and there are many more waiting to be uncovered.